Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So a couple of days ago I did a video, 10 reasons why I'm done with Fender Stratocasters. So thanks to everybody for watching, commenting, subscribing. I really appreciate your thoughts on it, on this pretty touchy subject really about Stratocasters. I know that a lot of people love Strats. I used to love them, I don't anymore. But anyway, that last video was 10 reasons why I'm done. So what I thought I'd do tonight is just put a little bit of context to it. So, I want to go through those 10 reasons again, but I want to just basically give you a couple of alternatives. I've got my Telecaster, I've got my Les Paul, and I just want to go through that list again just to give you a bit of context, on how these guitars solve some of the issues that I have with Stratocasters. Or that's just me, really, just a personal opinion. These are all just personal opinions. Don't get upset, right? I'm just waffling half the time. Okay, so anyway, the number one reason, right, why I'm done with the Strats is they always let me down, right? I always have issues with them. I described that in the first video. In contrast to that, Les Pauls, this is my I think this is my 6th or 7th Les Paul, I don't know, I'll have to count. But this is an Epiphone inspired by Gibson, Les Paul 60s standard, right? And there's nothing wrong with it, right? I've done a full review of this guitar. Check out the channel. The only thing wrong with it, right, was the control knobs were sitting a little bit too high. But I've since resolved that issue. I've done a video. I put a couple of washers around the back. That solved the issue. And I think the only other issue with it was it's not a Les Paul. It's not a Gibson Les Paul. It's a £500, fairly expensive for what it is, copy, right? Which is fair enough. It's never going to be a Gibson. It's constructed differently. It's less expensive, all that. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is I've had no issues with this guitar. And actually, I can't really think of a lot of issues that I've had with Les Pauls over the years either, right? So that's the Les Paul. Now the Telecaster, so this is a Squier Affinity series Telecaster. I've done a review on the channel with this as well. £118 from the now deceased Bax Music, right? Again, hardly any issues with this guitar, not great, frets great. I think the only issue with this guitar is, under very heavy gain, the bridge pickup is microphonic, but what do you expect for £118, right? I love this guitar, no issues whatsoever out of the box, none. In contrast to that Strat. What I will say is, just looking at the guitars together, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? Beauty is only skin deep, as they say. And that Strat, that polar white Strat, was a beautiful guitar. But as I say, it was just the looks, digging beneath the surface, it really let us down. So anyway, that's point one, and that's why these two guitars are sort of, well, these type of guitars have never let me down, really, contrary to Strats over the years. So number two, right, the Strat's a very fiddly instrument, right? You spend all your time fiddling about, and in contrast to that, a Telecaster, any Telecaster really, not fiddly at all, fixed bridge, very basic, two pickups, three-way selector, one volume, one tone, nothing to go wrong, very basic, not fiddly at all, right? Get in, great. Les Paul, again, fixed bridge, very little messing about with it. It is a little bit more fiddly in that you've got, a master volume and a master tone for each pickup, but you haven't got to faff about with tremolos or anything like that. It is more basic, it is more complicated than a Telecaster, but it's less complicated than a Stratocaster, so less fiddly in my opinion. Just a solid instrument is a Les Paul, right? So number three, the 60 cycle single coil hum. Now, you are still going to get that with all single coils, so you'll still get that with a Telecaster, fair play, but on a Les Paul, of course, humbuckers, no hum. So that's one reason to go, you know, down the Les Paul route. So there you go, it's a quick one. Number 4, the trem, right? Or should I say, the vintage style, or sometimes 2-point non-locking compromise piece of rubbish that you get on most Fender Strats, right? So, Telecaster, fixed bridge, no nonsense. Bend the string, the rest don't go out of tune. You don't have to set it up, you don't have to mess about with stupid springs in the cavity and getting it back. It's a liberating experience playing a Telecaster after playing a Strat. You know, with a Strat, the trem is an integral part of the guitar. If you change something, it affects the rest of the guitar. The Tele is just so much more stable, so much less to go wrong, more basic, less to worry about. It's great. And the same goes for the Les Paul, really. You know, this time, you know, 2-piece bridge. You've got a bridge and a stop tail piece. So slightly different, a little bit more fiddly, I guess, but you know, still super easy to set up. You know what I mean? This has got like the thumb wheels to set up the action and all that, but we'll get to the saddles next. So yeah, don't have to worry with the trem on a Les Paul, thank God. Right, now, number 5, the saddles. Now, this is a kind of, this Telecaster's has got the more modern style block saddles, which I do like. So that is an improvement over the saddles that come standard really on a lot of Stratocasters, the bent steel saddles. So that is an improvement. And what I will say is though, traditionally Telecasters do come with the sort of the two strings per saddles, right? Which are a bit of a faff. People have like intonation issues with them. I think this is a good compromise. I like the block saddles. I did replace my bent steel saddles on the Strat with block, so that's good. That's kind of a good compromise. And then on a Les Paul, of course, you know, you've just got this kind of arrangement where the saddles aren't, you can't individually adjust them for height because you've got the thumb wheels, but you can individually adjust them for intonation. Right, now, I've never had a problem with, you know, getting the action down really low on Les Pauls. You know, it's easier for me to get the action down on a Les Paul than it is on a Fender guitar, which has got like a, more often than not, you know, a 9.5 inch radius neck. This has got a flatter neck, you know, like a 12, I think it's a 12-inch radius, so it's easier to get the strings down. So yeah, but anyway, either way you look at it, both are a million times better than those bent steel saddles that you would get on a Strat most of the time. Now, number 6, sustain. So Telecaster again will always out sustain a Strat. You know, well, that's if you know that's if it's a apples and apples. You know, so if a Strat's got the same kind of pickup configuration, you know, single coils, it hasn't got humbuckers or anything, then the Tele's always going to out sustain a Strat if it's a like for like comparison. You know, the bridge pickup in a Telecaster is legendary. You know, you've got your fixed bridge, which helps with the sustain. You know, you've got the strings through the body, which helps with the sustain. You know, you've got less contours. I mean, this particular Tele has got a belly contour, which reduces the sustain a bit. And also, it's a thinner body Telecaster, but standard spec Telecaster doesn't have the belly cut. It's got a thicker body and I guess more sustain. But if you really want to go for sustain, there's only one guitar for you, isn't there? The Les Paul. Higher output pickups, you know, denser tone woods, thicker body, thick mahogany, you know, neck. It's great. And before I forget, right, please no comments, right, about, oh, the Gibson and Epiphone necks are very weak and you'll snap it, blah, 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 blah. I've never had a neck snap on a Les Paul for me, right? Yeah, if you drop it on the floor on some concrete, it's going to probably snap the neck, right? but these are just solid guitars, right? The neck's not weak. Just don't drop your guitar on its neck. What do you think's going to happen? What do you think's going to happen with the angle like that? Anyway, rant over. So yeah, sustain the Les Paul and the Telecaster, wipe the floor with the Fender Stratocaster. Right, now, number 7, you know, the ease of modification. So a lot of people say that the Stratocaster is one of the, you know, it was designed to be easier to mod. But in my opinion, it's not easy to mod compared to some guitars anyway. Compared to a Telecaster, you know, you've got the control plate here, you get 2 screws, bang, it's out. You take off the control plate to replace the pickups. Okay, the bridge pickup's a bit more of a faff because you have to take the bridge off. Fair enough, right? But it's probably 50-50. But Les Paul, so much easier to mod. You know, you've got your control cavities here that you've got direct access to. If you want to swap the pickups out, you don't even need to take the strings off. Yeah, take it off there. I mean, this Epiphone has even got the sort of the push-in connectors, so you just pop in the pickups. It's much easier to mod a Les Paul, I think, and then to mod a Stratocaster, unless you're changing the neck. But like I said in the previous video, don't swap your neck out on a Strat, right? It's a silly idea. You need to have it exact. You need to have the screws torque exact to make it right. Don't do it. Right, so number 8, the design, or the outdated design on a Stratocaster. Now, I guess with the Telecaster is the same, you know, it's an even older design to the Strat. But the Telecaster has not got the design issues that the Stratocaster has. You know, with the tune and stability of the trem and all that stuff. Yeah, okay, the Telecaster's still got the block, right, which does impede upper fret access a little bit. But I think there are far less issues with the design of the Telecaster than there are with the Stratocaster, for example. Right, now the Les Paul, again, you know, that's another design that hasn't changed, you know, in over 70 years really. And again, you know, the argument that I'm going to make is they got it right the first time. With the Stratocaster, there are definitely issues inherent with that design. You know, the tremolo, all the stuff that I discussed in the last video. But, you know, I just think the Telecaster and the Les Paul don't really need to change, in my opinion. Just my opinion. Just my opinion, sorry. Right, okay, so number 9, the bridge pickup. Oh, now it's getting good, right? Because the bridge pickup of the Telecaster is legendary, and it just wipes the floor with the bridge pickup of the Stratocaster, right? We went into that in the last video, right? And it's because, you know, it's a higher output pickup, it's differently configured. You know, it's bigger than the neck pickup, right? It's a completely different pickup. Plus, it's actually part of the bridge component. You know, it's part of the bridge. Completely different. Much more interesting, in my opinion. You know, much more useful than just stamps its authority on everything. It's brilliant. The Telecaster neck pickup is brilliant, right? Bridge pickup, not neck pickup. And then, of course, you know, even more power, you know, the bridge pickup of a Les Paul. Well, you know, I gigged for like about 15 years, and I was on that most of the time, and you could just do everything. You know, just all the grunt, you could roll back, you know, you could even clean up a little bit. It was great. You know, what can I say about the Les Paul bridge pickup being on so many records over the years? It's legendary, isn't it? And, you know, last but not least, the in-between positions on a Strat, right, which kind of sort of fade into insignificance when you apply gain, right? Now, that's kind of, I guess I am going to miss having those clean in-between positions, right, on a Strat. But guess what, you know, I'll live. You know, there's less options on the Telecaster and the Les Paul. You know, you've got a 3-way switch. The gain, you know, you go to the middle position under gain on the Telecaster, kind of the same issue as a Strat really. You're going to you're going to lose that definition. You know that the neck pickup is a bit more useful under gain, but really the middle position is your like go-to kind of clean rhythm tone. So kind of the same issue as a Strat on the Telecaster, but what I will say is under gain, because you've only got those 3 positions, you've got less wasted positions, put it that way. Right, now a Les Paul is, I think, a completely different kettle of fish, right? Because under gain on the Les Paul, okay, the Les Paul's not as nice clean, right, as the Strat, as we've said in previous videos. But you know, you've seen Slash, bridge pickup, you know, rock, rhythm or whatever, and then just neck pickup for his November Rain solo, right? Awesome. And you can use, you know, the middle pickup, plus you've got all those shades, you know, when you can sort of mix the 2 together for recording, you've got all that. Now, yeah. So I guess, you know, the kind of the middle positions on these 2 guitars aren't as sort of iconic as the in-between positions clean on a Strat. But the trade-off is less is more. You've got less options. There's less to frustrate you when you pile the gain on and you realise these in-between positions aren't really doing it. Anyway, I'm starting to waffle, so it must be getting towards the end of the video. So thanks for watching. Thanks for liking. You know, please subscribe if you're enjoying the content. Please subscribe to the channel because I've got a lot more coming up. I really appreciate it, but only if you're enjoying the content, of course. I hope this has given you sort of an idea of perhaps where to go if you're like in the market for a guitar and you're looking at Strats, you're looking at Tellys, you're looking at Les Pauls. You know, those are kind of the main 3 in my book, really. I mean, obviously there's others, PRSs, semi-acoustics, whatever, but mainly it's going to be one of these 3. So hopefully I've given you a few ideas on which would be the right direction for you if you're just starting out or if you've got a little bit more experience. And I hope that my sort of 30 years of experience is helpful. Okay, I am waffling. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one.